He bought me, not to love me, to lock me up. The words sat in my mouth like a metal coin. I flipped them silently, tasting the cold, tasting the weight, while the elevator rose through the glass spine of the old packed tower. Outside, the city was a smear of rain and neon. Inside, the elevator smelled like disinfectant and a polite kind of fear. I watched my reflection in the doors, pale, steady on the surface, storming underneath. The 29th floor opened into a corridor that pretended to be a museum. Slate walls, frosted glass, a painting of wolves running into fog, their bodies almost erased by it. I walked on heels that weren't mine, in a dress that wasn't mine, toward a conference room with air cold enough to iron a person flat. 2 betas in legal black stood on either side of the door like punctuation marks. One opened it. I stepped into the sentence. He was already there, Kaine Archer. I had expected a man who enjoyed purchasing things, the kind of alpha who collected lives like cufflinks. I got a man who took up space without trying. Dark suit, open throat, hands at his sides. His eyes were the only deliberate thing about him, gray with a winter wolf edge. The kind of gaze that had learned to recognize danger, and then become it. He didn't look at me like acquisition. He looked at me like weather, something you prepare for or die in. "Miss Holt," one of the lawyers said, like he was offering me a seat in absolution. "Mr. Archer." Kaine didn't move. "Lira," he said, voice low even. Not a command. More like a door with its hinges oiled. I sat because my knees wanted me to, not because he did. The chair was leather and expensive, the kind that tried to make you feel small because it was comfortable. Across the table, a stack of contracts waited, crisp as a slap. My old Pax crest, inked gold, glinted at the top of the page. I didn't look at it. I looked at him. "If you were aiming for a first impression," I said. "Kidnapping me by invoice was bold." One of the betas made a sound that wanted to be a laugh before it remembered itself and crawled back inside his throat. Kaine's mouth didn't twitch. "No one is kidnapping you," he said. "Right," I said. "We're doing this with paperwork. Much classier." The lawyer beside me started the ritual. Page numbers, clauses, a little bloodless sermon about obligations and indemnities. Every time he said transfer, a little splinter pressed deeper behind my ribs. I watched Kaine instead. The way he didn't fidget, didn't fill silence with words meant to decorate power. He let things be quiet the way the ocean let a boat be small. "You'll be staying off pack property," the lawyer was saying. "Mr. Archer assumes guardianship." "I assume responsibility," Kaine corrected. His eyes were on me when he said it. "See?" I offered the room a smile. "It's not ominous at all when a man says he's responsible for you." "Lira," Kaine said again. And I hated how my name sounded less like a leash and more like a steadying hand. "If you read the document." "Oh, I'm reading," I said. "It's just in a dialect of corporate I'm allergic to." A shadow of something, amusement I thought, crossed his face and was gone. He shifted, and the room shifted around him, like gravity had preferences. I signed where I had to sign because the alternative wasn't freedom, it was survival turned into a coin flip. The last time I'd gambled, I'd ended up property. "Congratulations," the lawyer said. "The debt is satisfied. Miss Holt, Lira, you are no longer under the jurisdiction of the Holt-Rowan pack. Let the fireworks begin," I said. "Do they drop from the ceiling, or is that extra?" No confetti fell. The betas collected their papers, their righteousness, their carefully neutral faces. The door clicked shut behind them, and the air warmed by a degree no thermostat could measure. It was just the two of us in the rain at the windows, busy pretending it wasn't listening. "You hate this," Kaine said. "Strong word," I said. "Loathe, abhor, despise. Hate is more of a weekend hobby." He didn't come closer. He didn't offer a hand or a chain. He regarded me as if the safest thing he could do for both of us was to remain exactly where he was. I noticed stupid details because adrenaline narrows the world into Civics 101, the nick on his knuckle like a crescent moon, the clean scent of cedar and something colder, the way his tie was loosened, an alpha's throat bared on purpose. "This protects you," he said. "This controls me," I said. the words leaving a bruise on the table. Let's not confuse a new cage with open sky. Protection is not ownership, he said. I don't want a bond. The laugh came before I could stop it, sharp and too bright. That's a relief. Because I don't want a captor. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Memory. You'll come with me tonight, he said. My place is secure, no pack access, no ties to your former. He stopped, changed course with the efficiency of someone who'd learned not to step on landmines. You'll have a room. If you want to leave, tell me, I won't stop you. Except for the part where you bought my contract, I said. I bought your way out, he said. There's a difference. Depends on who's holding the door. He inclined his head as if I'd made a fair point in a debate we were both pretending wasn't about the rest of my life. I stood. My hands were steady, because I had taught them to be steady. One rule, I said. If you tell me to be grateful, I'm going to throw something. Noted, he said. Second rule, I added. Do not loom, I'm not a rabbit. I bite. You already have, he murmured. Heat licked the back of my neck. I blamed the air vent. Congratulations on your purchase, I said. Does your acquisition come with a return policy? I don't return people, he said softly. I return violence. For a moment I saw it, not the suit, not the tower, but a man shaped by something that had teeth. I felt the slick, old panic try to rise. My lungs tightened. The room tilted. I braced for the usual spiral, clammy hands, fast breath, the urge to run until the horizon broke. Window, he said quietly. What? You're watching the room, he said. Watch the rain instead. It was infuriating that I did. I turned my head, built a breathing rhythm on the thin silver ropes streaming down the glass. Out in. Out in. My pulse slowed. The panic didn't leave, it just lost its knife. I'm not fragile, I said. I know, he said. That's not why I noticed. My laugh came out smaller than I wanted. Do you always study people like you're trying to learn their language? Yes. Why me? Because you're in danger, he said. And because you still make jokes. Bad ones, I said. Effective ones, he countered. We stood there, two strangers with a contract between us, and a story neither of us had agreed to tell. He didn't reach for me, and for a ridiculous second that hurt, as if a familiar pattern could be safer than an unknown kindness. The city hissed. Somewhere, a siren Dopplered past, red-bluered. He moved first, to the door. We should go, he said. The longer you stay here, the more time your former pack has to give the press the story they want. And, what story is that? That I stole you, he said. People prefer wolves in old costumes. It makes them feel safer about the ones they keep. I followed him because the elevator was leaving either way, and I'd learned to choose the cage with windows. We passed the wolves in fog painting. I didn't look away this time. In the elevator, I stood at the opposite corner, arms loose, jaw tight. He didn't fill the silence. He let me keep it like a blanket I hadn't decided to trust. At the lobby, the glass doors, side open. A black sedan idled at the curb. The rain had decided it was serious now. Kaine opened an umbrella, then stopped, holding it there, not offering it, not making me step beneath it, just waiting. I stepped under because I am not an idiot. Outside, the city smelled like wet metal and possibility. He walked beside me without crowding. We reached the car, he opened the back door and then moved away, giving me space to choose. I hated him for that, and for how the hate broke against something softer and fell useless to the floor. I slid in. He shut the door, rounded to the other side, and the car became a small dark room where the future sat quietly wearing my name. He didn't touch me. He didn't have to. At the stoplight, red washed the interior in a low, arterial glow. I saw my face in the window, my mouth set, my eyes bright with a fight I refused to lose, and his reflection steady behind mine. And the thought arrived, uninvited and true enough to scare me. He hadn't touched me. But I felt his hands already at my throat. The house sat on the edge of the city like it had decided civilization was optional. A Ratiran gate swallowed us whole, and the driveway wound up through a stretch of pine trees that leaned over the road as if conspiring. When the car stopped, I stared through the rain-streaked window at the kind of place novels warned you about. Stone, glass, angles too sharp for comfort. Too big for one man. Too quiet for anyone human. Inside smelled of cedar, old books, and a silence so thick it pressed on my skin. The foyer was tall enough to make me feel like an insect, and lit just enough to remind me that shadows were welcome here too. And then, coffee. The scent curled out from somewhere deeper in the house, warm and almost domestic. Like someone had dropped a flame in the middle of the cold stone. I followed it, because instincts are stronger than contracts. That's how I met her. Ah! A woman's voice burst into the corridor before I even turned the corner. So this is the little bird he dragged home. She was older, her hair pinned back in a bun that was more stubborn than neat. Her apron had a constellation of flower handprints. Her eyes were sharp with the kind of humor that never asked permission. Lira Holt, I said, because introductions are shields. Marianne, she replied, sticking her hand out with zero ceremony. Omega, cook, gossip collector. Do not test me on the last one, I will always win. I shook her hand because refusing would have been a declaration of war. Her grip was stronger than expected. Coffee? She asked. Yes. My voice betrayed me. It almost sighed. Good girl. She patted my shoulder and marched me into the kitchen. The kitchen was the first warm place in the house. Copper pans gleamed, a kettle hissed, and the table looked like people should have been sitting around it, arguing over bread. Instead, it was just me, perched like a trespasser. Marianne poured coffee into a mug that said World's Okayest Alpha. I stared at it. Don't look at me, she said, sliding it over. I don't buy the mugs. I just put the caffeine in them. I took a sip, burned my tongue, pretended it was fine. So, how long have you been here? Longer than him. She pointed her chin vaguely toward the ceiling, where Kaine was presumably brooding in some cavernous study. I came with the house, darling, like bad wallpaper. I laughed despite myself. The sound felt too loud in the quiet, like a glass dropped on marble. You'll get used to the silence, Marianne said, studying me over her own mug. Or you'll fill it. Depends on the kind of creature you are. I didn't answer, because silence and I had a complicated relationship. Dinner that night was another kind of test. The table could have seated 10. It was just the two of us, the sound of cutlery and rain. Marianne had made roasted chicken, potatoes, and a dessert I was too proud to admit I wanted seconds of. She flitted in and out, humming, leaving us with more space than I needed. So, I said finally, stabbing a piece of chicken, what does one do in a mausoleum like that, besides haunt the hallways and polish their tragic silences? Kaine cut his food. Ate it. Didn't rise. Do you brood professionally? Or is it just a hobby? I tried again. Silence. Come on, I said. You can't expect me to sit here and play obedient Omega. Say something. His gaze lifted from his plate. Steady. Unhurried. You're eating? I blinked. That's it? You're eating, he repeated, softer, like the fact itself mattered. I stared at him across the ridiculous expanse of table, fork frozen halfway. The words landed wrong, like a kindness disguised as a fact. My chest felt tight, and I hated that it did. So I went for the jugular. What? You keep me fed and caged, and that makes you generous? He didn't flinch. It makes you alive. The silence after that was a canyon. My sarcasm echoed into it and fell flat. He returned to his food as if the conversation hadn't happened. I chewed like it didn't matter, but the chicken tasted of iron now. By the time Marianne came back with dessert, humming some old tune, the air was too thick to cut. She put down a dish of apple tart, looked at me, looked at Kaine, and clucked her tongue. Good grief. It's like feeding ghosts in here. Next time I'm piping laughter into the ventilation. I nearly choked on my tart. Kaine, infuriatingly, didn't even smirk. That was the problem with this house. With him. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of things unsaid, pressing so hard against me that my own voice sounded foreign. My jokes were knives tossed at shadows, and shadows don't bleed. I swallowed another bite of tart, sweet and heavy. Fine, I muttered, mostly to myself. If he won't talk, I'll just talk louder. No one argued with me. The silence never does. The next morning the house smelled of ink and caffeine instead of rain. I found him in the living room, Rylan. Beta, legal mind, part-time buzzkill. He sat cross-legged in a leather armchair with a tablet balanced on his knee and a mug of coffee that could have fueled a small army. His suit jacket was folded neatly beside him, sleeves rolled up like the world was a deposition he'd already won. The living room had one wall made entirely of glass, opening onto a garden that looked deliberately wild, ivy crawling over stone, hedges trimmed like they'd been given orders and obeyed reluctantly. I hovered by the doorway, coffee from Marianne still hot in my hand. Kaine was already there, leaning against the far window like he'd been cut out of the architecture. Silent. Still. Watching. Good, Rylan said without looking up. You're awake. Let's get this circus over with. Good morning to you too, I muttered, sinking onto the couch. He tapped his screen, eyes flicking like a scanner. Clause 12. You are, by all legal definitions, under guardianship. Which means... Guardianship? I cut in. What am I, a minor, a fragile heirloom? He sipped his coffee. Both, technically. Moving on. Clause 15. Excuse me, I said, sitting forward. Do you realize how insulting this is? Being treated like a line item? He suggested, dry as bone. I gaped. Did you just call me an investment? Yes, he said. A very expensive one. Don't look so offended. You're in good company. Archer here has a whole portfolio. Rylan. Kaine said, voice low. What? Rylan shrugged. She asked. My pulse hammered. My fists curled tight around the mug. I am not an investment. Legally, Rylan said, you are. Financially, you are. Emotionally, well, that's above my pay grade. Your pay grade must be hell if sarcasm is a job requirement, I snapped. He smirked. You catch on quick. I wanted to throw the coffee at him. At both of them. At the contract. But Kaine was watching me with that infuriating calm, like he'd seen storms before and knew which way the wind would die. Say something, I demanded, turning on him. You think this is fine? You think buying me gives you the right to treat me like a stock option? Kaine didn't move, didn't blink. Then finally, I don't think I bought you, he said. His voice filled the room like a stone in water. I think I bought your way out. And that means I'm responsible. The words landed too heavy to argue with immediately. Responsibility, not ownership. It was still a cage, but the bars looked different. Rylan raised his brows at me as if to say, see? He's the reasonable one. I stood abruptly. I need air. The garden was the kind of green that wanted to swallow you whole. I stepped onto the flagstone path, the air damp with last night's rain, ivy brushing against my arm like a whisper. Behind me the house loomed with its glass eye, Kaine still framed in it, watching. Freedom was 20 steps away. Maybe less. The gate at the far end of the path was low, its lock old. My heart raced. I could make it. I walked faster. Then faster still. My shoes slipped on wet stone, but I didn't care. The gate grew larger, closer. Possibility turning into oxygen. My fingers closed on the iron. Lira. Just my name, said behind me. No hand on my wrist. No force dragging me back. Just a sound. I froze. When I turned, he was standing at the edge of the garden, not moving closer. He didn't have to. You think buying means owning? I said, breath sharp. That's all this is. A new master, new walls. I think buying means I answer for you, Kaine said evenly. That's the difference. The gate handle burned cold in my palm. I wanted to scream at him, to run, to make him chase me so I could prove he was like all the others. But he didn't move. He only watched, steady and unflinching, as if the choice had always been mine. And that was worse, because if I stayed, it would mean I'd chosen. The silence stretched between us, heavy with things I didn't want to admit. Finally, I let go of the gate and walked back, each step louder than it should have been. When I reached him, he stepped aside, opening the path back into the house. No words. No victory. Just that unbearable calm. I hated him for it. And I hated myself more for the flicker of relief that came with it. The city looked different from the passenger seat of Kaine's car. Bigger, louder. Like it didn't care that I was free on paper but chained in practice. When he dropped me 2 blocks from the cafe, he didn't say anything, just that look, steady and unreadable, before driving off. Inside, the cafe was warmth pressed between brick walls. Steam fogged the windows, and the air smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso. I spotted her immediately, Ira, my best friend since high school. She was already standing, her hands trembling as she pulled me into a hug so tight it knocked the air from my chest. Ira was taller than me, shoulders broad, the kind of alpha presence that usually filled a room. But today her grip shook, her breath uneven. I squeezed back harder. God, Lira, she muttered into my hair. I thought... Her voice caught. I know, I whispered. But I'm here. I'm okay. When she pulled back, I saw the truth in her eyes, panic still circling, waiting for a weak moment to strike. I knew the signs, shallow breathing, the twitch of her fingers against her thigh. She hid it well most days, but not from me. We sat. The table was small, our knees brushing. She stared at me for a long moment, like confirming I was real. You look the same, she said finally. But different. Like you're carrying something heavy you won't admit to. I smirked, because humor was easier than honesty. That's just my sparkling personality. Don't joke, she said softly. We ordered coffee. I wrapped my hands around the mug when it came, letting the heat ground me. For a while, we just sat in the comfortable silence of old friendship, the kind that didn't need filling. Then she leaned forward, lowering her voice. Tell me about him. I rolled my eyes. Which part? The part where he bought me like I was real estate, or the part where he refuses to actually do anything with his purchase? Ira's mouth tightened. Kaine Archer. She said the name like a warning. You know who he is, right? I shrugged, feigning casual. Tall, broody, addicted to silence. Collects contracts the way normal people collect hobbies? Her eyes flashed. No, Lira, he's dangerous. Everyone says that about alphas, I shot back. This is different. Her hand shook as she set her cup down. There are stories, whispers in the old packs, fights that ended with bodies nobody talked about. He left his pack, and no one asks why. That's not nothing. I sipped my coffee, keeping my face neutral. Inside, her words settled like stones in my stomach. Maybe I like dangerous, I said, forcing lightness into my tone. Keeps life interesting. Don't, she said. Her voice cracked. Don't joke about this, please. He might be protecting you now, but men like that don't change. They just... Wait. Her panic was rising, I could see it. The tremor in her jaw. The shallow pull of her breath. I reached across the table and took her hand, steadying it between mine. Hey, I said gently. Breathe, in, out. Like the waves. Remember? Her eyes brimmed, but she nodded, following the rhythm. After a few moments, her grip steadied. You always do that, she murmured. Pull me back when I'm falling. Someone has to, I said softly. She managed a small smile. But, who's pulling you back, Lira? I didn't answer. I couldn't. The truth was, part of me already knew the answer, and it terrified me. So, I leaned back, forcing a grin. Don't worry about me. I'm just fine. Kaine Archer can glower all he wants, but he doesn't scare me. It was a lie. Because even as I said it, I felt the memory of his eyes, gray as winter. Storms, steady enough to calm a panic attack that wasn't even his, and maybe that was the scariest thing of all. The kitchen smelled like garlic and butter, the kind of scent that tried to pretend this house wasn't a fortress. Pots clattered, pans hissed, and Marianne hummed a tune that was probably older than both of us put together. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her stir something in a pan. She moved like she owned the space, which, to be fair, she probably did. You're frowning again, she said without turning around. Careful, darling, keep that up, and you'll wrinkle before your 30s. Thanks for the reminder, I muttered. The door swung open, and Kaine stepped in. He didn't announce himself. He never did. Just walked in, like the silence rearranged itself to make room. Rylan followed, tablet in one hand, coffee mug in the other, as if both were permanent fixtures. "Lovely," Marianne said, clapping her hands once. "My 3 favorite headaches in one room. If you're going to argue, at least do it where I can watch." "I wasn't planning to argue," I said quickly. "Of course you weren't," Marianne replied, smirking. "But give it a minute. Sparks always fly when you two share air. Honestly, would it kill you to take it to the bedroom? Less mess for me to clean up." I choked on nothing. Kaine's expression didn't change, which somehow made it worse. Ryland snorted into his coffee. "You see?" Marianne wagged her spoon at me. "Even the beta thinks so." "Don't drag me into this," Ryland said, grinning. "I'm only here for the free dinner, and the show." I glared at both of them, then turned on Kaine. "Are you going to say something, or just stand there looking like a tragic statue?" "Statues don't move," he said. "Oh, you do have a sense of humor. Hidden deep under that glacier exterior." He didn't rise to the bait. He just leaned against the counter opposite me. Arms folded, silent. The kind of silence that wasn't passive. It pressed, waiting for me to break it. "Well?" I snapped. "You drag me into your mausoleum, put your watchdog lawyer on me, let your housemaid gossip like she's auditioning for a talk show. What am I supposed to do? Smile and say thank you?" "You're supposed to eat," he said. The words were so unexpected, so soft, I almost missed them. My mouth opened, closed. "Eat?" I echoed. "You skipped breakfast," he said simply. "And lunch." I bristled. "What, are you tracking my meals now? Do you keep a spreadsheet?" Ryland raised his tablet. "Actually, don't," Kaine said quietly. The single word shut him down. It shut me down too, though I'd never admit it. The kettle whistled. Marianne set down bowls of stew, muttering something about stubborn wolves and children who didn't know what was good for them. I sank into a chair, more from exhaustion than obedience. Kaine sat across from me, his presence filling the space like a second heartbeat. I picked at the stew, then tasted it. Warm, comforting. It annoyed me how quickly it eased the tension curled in my stomach. "See?" Marianne said cheerfully, plopping into a chair of her own. "Food fixes everything, even sulking omegas with too much sarcasm." "I don't sulk," I said. "You brood loudly then," she corrected. Ryland sipped his coffee like he was toasting her. I rolled my eyes, but the fight had drained out of me. Somewhere between the garlic, the stew, and Kaine's unnerving attention, I realized my shoulders weren't as tight. My chest wasn't as heavy. That was when it hit me, the truth I didn't want. I felt calmer, safe even, because he'd noticed, because he'd said something, because, in his quiet way, he cared enough to track whether or not I ate. It should have felt suffocating. Another form of control. Instead, it felt like the first time in months someone had seen me without demanding something in return. I hated that it mattered. Marianne caught my eye, her grin smug, like she knew exactly what I was thinking. I stabbed at my stew just to break eye contact. "You're impossible," I muttered toward Kaine. He didn't answer. Just kept eating, calm and silent. And somehow that silence didn't feel like a cage this time. It felt like space I could breathe in. The storm came without thunder. It arrived as a phone call, Ryland's voice, clipped and low in the hallway, carrying. Just far enough for me to hear the words, "former pack," and "they're looking." The air changed after that, tight and restless. The house was too quiet, like it was listening. I locked myself in my room, heart racing. Every shadow looked sharper. Every creak in the wood became a footstep. My lungs forgot how to work. By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. My body moved before my brain could argue. I slipped out into the corridor, barefoot, nightshirt clinging to damp skin. The hall stretched long and dim. Doors like silent mouths. His was the last one, half open, the faintest light inside. I pushed it wider. Kaine was there, sitting in a chair by the window, a book closed on his lap. The lamplight cut a clean line over his face, sharpening it into something mythic. He didn't look surprised to see me. "Couldn't sleep," I whispered. "You're shaking," he said. "Observation skills, 10 out of 10. But my voice cracked, and that ruined the joke. He set the book aside. For a second I thought he would stand, come closer, cage me in that alpha gravity of his. Instead, he just nodded at the bed. "Stay here," he said. I hesitated, waiting for the fine print. No catch came. So I crossed the room and climbed under the blanket, curling up on one side. The sheets were cool, smelling faintly of cedar and rain. My heart thudded against the mattress like it wanted to escape. Kaine didn't move from the chair. He leaned back, steady, a sentinel carved from silence. "You'll sit there all night?" I asked. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you're afraid." "And what, you're my bodyguard now?" "No," he said. "Just here." I pulled the blanket tighter around me, staring at his outline. Something inside me unclenched, furious at itself for doing so. Hours stretched. The storm outside broke in rain, tapping against the windows like fingers. The house sighed around us. My body should have been tense, alert, ready to run. Instead, my eyelids drooped. His presence was a tether, annoying, infuriating, steady. When I woke, it was still dark. He hadn't moved. His eyes found mine immediately, like he'd never stopped watching. "You don't sleep?" I muttered. "Sometimes. And sometimes you just sit in a chair all night?" "Sounds healthy." He almost smiled. Almost. The silence grew heavy again, but different this time, softer, like fabric instead of stone. I lay there, listening to my own breath, his steadiness anchoring it. And then, I don't know when it shifted. Maybe it was the fear ebbing. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the way his gaze softened, not pity, not possession, just recognition. My body moved before I thought better of it. I sat up, the blanket falling to my waist, and crossed the small space between us. His eyes widened slightly as I knelt in front of the chair, my hands trembling, not from panic this time, but from something worse. I touched him first. My fingers brushed his wrist, light as a secret. "Lira," he said, voice low, rough. "No," I whispered. Don't say anything." He froze, muscles taut, as if the world hung on a hinge. But he didn't pull back. Didn't claim. He let me decide. I leaned in. The first kiss was clumsy, desperate, not about romance, about survival. About needing proof that I was alive, and that someone else was too. He didn't take, didn't press. He let me come closer, let me guide it, his breath steady against mine. The second kiss was slower, warmer. A question I was answering with my whole body. His hand lifted, paused in the air, then dropped back to the armrest. He didn't touch me. Not until I tangled my fingers with his, pulling his palm against mine. It wasn't about dominance. Not about alpha or omega. It was about the silence breaking in the gentlest way possible. I hated it. I hated that I needed it. I hated most of all that the panic loosened only when he was near, that the fractured pieces of me lined up like glass finding its seam. I hated that with him. I felt whole. I pulled back, breath uneven, cheeks hot. He studied me like I was something fragile he didn't dare mishandle. "You should sleep," he said softly. "I will," I whispered. "If you're here." He nodded once. The chair creaked as he shifted, settling in again, still giving me the space I didn't know how to ask for. I climbed back into bed, heart thrumming, lips tingling with the ghost of what I'd started. The storm outside eased to a drizzle, the house sinking back into silence. And for the first time in months, I closed my eyes and let the dark come without fighting it. Because he was there. And I hated him for that. Morning broke slow and gray, the kind of light that felt like it hadn't made up its mind. I woke tangled in sheets that weren't mine, heartbeat too loud in a body that remembered the night far too vividly. For a moment everything was still, the faint scent of cedar on the pillow, the hush of rain dripping from the eaves, the trace of warmth where his presence had steadied me through the dark. And then it hit me. The weight in my chest, the burn in my lungs. The same sick echo, it's a cage. Again, I sat up too fast, dragging the blanket with me, clutching it like armor. My breath stuttered. My hands shook. The walls felt closer, the ceiling lower, the silence sharper. Panic crawled up my throat, clawing for air. Across the room, Kaine stirred. He was still in the chair, broad shoulders bent, eyes finding me instantly. His expression didn't shift, not surprise, not guilt, not demand, just watchfulness. "Don't," I rasped. "Don't come closer." He didn't. He stayed where he was, steady as stone. My heart banged harder, waiting for the inevitable, for the hand, the command, the claim. But none came. Instead, he leaned back, slow, palms open on the armrests, as if to show me he had nothing to hold. "You're safe," he said quietly. The words didn't fix the panic, but they didn't make it worse either. I pressed my knuckles to my mouth, trying to breathe around the tightness. The blanket slipped, but I yanked it back up like it could keep the world out. "This is what they do," I muttered, half to myself. "Feed you. Shelter you. Make you feel like you belong, just so you forget the bars." Kaine's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. "I won't hold you." A bitter laugh cracked out of me. "You already are." "No." His voice was firm now, but not sharp. "If you want to leave, the door is yours." I blinked at him, disoriented by the offer. My panic didn't know what to do with freedom dressed up so plainly. The silence stretched. He didn't push, didn't prod, just sat there, letting me shake, letting me hate him, letting me try to catch air without tearing apart. And slowly, it worked. My breathing evened. The frantic edge dulled. My pulse fell back into rhythm. When I finally dropped the blanket from my face, he was still there, still steady, still not moving closer. "You always do this," I whispered, my throat raw. "Do what?" "Stop?" I swallowed. When I get like this, you stop, you pull back." His gaze held mine, steady enough to make me feel exposed. "Because if I don't, you'll think I'm like them." The words landed heavy. I hated how much sense they made. I looked away, staring at the rain streaking the window. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "And you're not?" "No," he said simply. Something in my chest shifted, fragile and unsteady. Like a line I'd been clinging to had frayed. But instead of falling, I was finding balance in the space between. I wrapped the blanket tighter, not because I needed protection, but because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. "Breakfast will be ready soon," he said, after a long pause. His tone was practical, grounding, not a demand, just normal. I almost laughed again, because normal felt more alien than danger. When he finally stood, he didn't look at me as if I owed him anything. He just nodded once, quiet, and left the room. The door closed softly. I sat there, shaking less, breathing more, caught on that thin and impossible line between panic and trust. And I hated, almost as much as I needed, the truth unraveling inside me. He stopped because he saw me, and because of that, I didn't feel like a cage was closing. I felt like for once, someone was giving me space to stay whole. The television in the study glowed like a wound. I hadn't meant to watch it. I was just passing by, coffee in hand, when the headline froze me in place. "Prominent alpha found dead. Evidence points to Kaine Archer." My breath went thin. The coffee nearly slipped from my fingers. On screen, a reporter spoke in the brisk, confident tone of someone who'd never had their life sold on paper. "Authorities have not confirmed details," she said, "but sources close to the investigation suggest Kaine Archer, former member of the Rowan pack, is a suspect in the death of Donovan Vare. The body was discovered late last night outside the city limits. Vare, known for his influence in pack negotiations, had several enemies, but Archer's name has surfaced repeatedly." I clicked the TV off before her voice could wrap around my throat. The silence that followed was worse. Donovan Vare, my former patron, my buyer before Kaine, dead, and Kaine, accused. My legs carried me to the kitchen without permission. Marianne glanced up from kneading dough, eyes narrowing when she saw my face. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said. "Maybe I did," I whispered. Before she could press, the front door opened. Ryland strode in, tablet under one arm, coffee already in his hand as though he'd conjured it from thin air. He looked at me, then at Marianne, then back at me again. So, you've seen the news? Is it true? My voice cracked. Tell me it isn't. Rylan set the tablet on the counter and sighed. Truth is complicated. Facts are simpler. Fact, Donovan had enemies stacked higher than his bank accounts. Fact, Kaine wasn't within 50 miles when it happened. Fact, people want a monster, and Kaine fits the silhouette. That's not an answer, I snapped. It's the only one that matters, he said dryly. The rest is spin. Before I could fire back, my phone buzzed. Era. I stepped into the hall, pressed it to my ear. Hey. Her voice was sharp, frantic. Lira, you've seen the reports, right? You need to get out of there. I squeezed my eyes shut. Era. No, she cut me off. Listen to me. He's dangerous. You don't understand. Men like him. Her breath hitched. I heard it, the start of the spiral, the edges of a panic attack. He'll destroy you too. Breathe. I whispered automatically. In, out. With me, come on. I counted with her until the ragged edge of her voice smoothed. When she could finally speak again, it was a broken whisper. Please. Run before it's too late. The call ended before I could answer. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, the echo of her words tangled with the memory of Kaine's voice last night, steady and patient in the dark. Run. Stay. Cage. Freedom. Monster. Anchor. I couldn't tell which was real. When I went back to the kitchen, Rylan was sipping his coffee like this was all Tuesday routine. She tell you to run? He asked, not looking up. I didn't answer. He shrugged. Of course she did. Easier to believe in ghosts than in a man trying not to become one. My hands shook. You sound so sure. I'm a lawyer, he said flatly. Certainty is half the job. But between you and me? He finally met my eyes. If Kaine wanted Donovan Vare dead, it wouldn't have been messy, and no one would be pointing fingers, because there'd be nothing left to find. I swallowed hard, the room tilting. So either way, he's capable of it, I whispered. Capable doesn't mean guilty, Rylan said. His gaze softened a fraction. And guilty doesn't mean he'd hurt you. But my chest wouldn't unclench. My mind kept circling the same point. I didn't know which side of Kaine Archer was true. The one who sat awake all night so I could breathe, or the one the world whispered about in dark corners. And the worst part? I wasn't sure which one scared me more. I found him in the study, the glow of a single lamp cutting across his shoulders. Papers were stacked on the desk in neat deliberate order, but Kaine wasn't looking at them. He was staring at the rain-streaked window, jaw set, as if the storm outside had asked him a question he couldn't answer. I didn't knock. Tell me it isn't true. His gaze flicked to me, steady, unreadable. What part? Don't play with me. My voice came out sharper than I wanted. The news. Donovan. They're saying you... I stopped, breath catching. They're saying you killed him. Silence. Deny it, I demanded. Just say you didn't. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. The quiet pressed harder than shouting ever could. Finally he said. Decide for yourself. My stomach dropped. That's it? That's all you have to say? Yes. You don't even care if I believe you? His eyes met mine, cool and unwavering. It matters what you choose, not what I tell you. It was like the floor gave out beneath me. My hands trembled, anger and fear tangling, until I couldn't tell them apart. Do you realize what this feels like? That I'm trapped in another cage, waiting for the lock to snap shut? You're not trapped, he said evenly. Then why can't you just give me the truth? Because truth doesn't change what you see when you look at me, he said. His voice was low, almost tired. So decide, Lira. Believe me, or don't. The finality in his tone sliced deeper than any denial or confession could have. I shook my head, the words breaking in my throat. You don't get to put this on me. Not after everything. The study was suddenly too small, too heavy with his silence. I turned, heart hammering, and walked out before he could stop me. Except, he didn't. The door closed behind me without resistance. I ended up at Era's, the only place that felt less suffocating. She didn't ask questions at first. She just wrapped me in a blanket, pressed tea into my hands, and let me sit on her couch staring at nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "You don't have to explain. I know what he is." Her certainty should have anchored me. Instead, it splintered me further. I wanted to believe her, to take the easy path, run, hide, pretend I hadn't felt something solid in Kaine's quiet presence. But the memory of his voice lingered. "Decide for yourself." I hated him for saying it. I hated myself more for needing to. The next morning, Marianne found me in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour, her eyes sharper than usual. "You look like a ghost," she said bluntly. "Did you at least sleep?" I shook my head. She clucked her tongue and set down the bowl she was mixing. "You think he betrayed you? He won't even defend himself," I snapped. Marianne tilted her head. "And that means what? That he's guilty, or that he doesn't care about convincing you?" "Both," I said bitterly. "No." She wiped her hands on her apron, stepping closer. "You don't see it, do you? He never held you, not once. He gave you space when you panicked. He let you walk out that door." I blinked at her, throat tightening. "You keep saying you're trapped," she went on. "But cages don't open their doors and let the bird fly." Her words hit harder than Kaine's silence. Because the truth I didn't want to face was simple, she was right. I was the one holding on. The courthouse smelled like dust and old wood, the kind of place where truth was supposed to matter. I sat on the hard bench, nails biting into my palms, waiting for the verdict that would decide everything. Kaine sat 3 rows ahead, shoulders straight, expression unreadable. Rylan was beside him, tablet in hand, looking far too smug for a man running on his 5th cup of coffee. The judge's voice cut through the air. Charges dismissed. Insufficient evidence. It was done. Just like that. The tension snapped out of the room like a rubber band. Reporters surged forward, cameras flashing, voices colliding. "Mr. Archer, a word. How do you respond to the accusations?" Kaine ignored them. He stood, calm as ever, and walked out through the crush of bodies. Rylan clearing the way like an exasperated shepherd. I didn't move. Couldn't. The relief I should have felt was smothered by something heavier. Because I knew. By the time I got back to the house, his things were gone. The silence was different now, emptier, stripped bare. On the kitchen counter, Marianne had left a plate of rolls and a folded piece of paper. My name written across it in Kaine's steady hand. I opened it with trembling fingers. "You're free now." That was all I could give you. No signature, no plea, just freedom written like an apology. The paper slipped from my hands. I sank into a chair, clutching at air, realizing what freedom felt like without him. It felt hollow. All those months, I'd cursed him for caging me. And yet now, with the door wide open, I wasn't soaring. I was falling. Marianne found me there hours later. She didn't scold. She just set a cup of tea in front of me and muttered, "About damn time you figure it out." I glared through blurry eyes. "Figure what out?" "That he didn't keep you." She tapped my chest with a flour-dusted finger. "You kept yourself." I hated how right she was. So, I packed a bag. And this time, I walked out of the house not because I was running, but because I was choosing. It wasn't hard to find him. Kaine never hid. He just withdrew. A man like him left traces. Quiet ones, sure. But enough. A motel on the edge of the city, anonymous enough to disappear into. He opened the door when I knocked, his face giving away nothing. Just that same calm, steady presence. "Lira," he said, as though my name surprised him and yet didn't. I stepped inside before I lost my nerve. The room was bare. Bed, chair, suitcase half packed. Like he'd been ready to vanish completely. "You left," I said. "I gave you what you wanted." His voice was low, controlled. "Freedom." I shook my head, tears burning. "No. You gave me silence. You gave me space. You gave me everything I didn't know I needed. And then you walked away." His jaw tightened. "Because you deserved the choice." "I do." My voice wavered, but I forced the words out. "And I'm making it. Right now." I crossed the room, heart pounding, until I stood inches from him. His eyes searched mine, guarded, like he was bracing for rejection. "I didn't choose you then," I whispered. "But I choose you now. No contract, no conditions. Just you." For the first time since I'd met him, his composure cracked, his breath caught, gray eyes flashing with something raw, something unarmored. "Lira." I silenced him with a kiss. Soft. Certain. A choice written in touch instead of ink. He didn't claim. He didn't cage. He just kissed me back, steady and reverent, like he'd been waiting for me to find my own way to him. When we finally pulled apart, Marianne's voice came from the doorway. "Well," she said cheerfully, arms crossed, "it's about damn time. I've already started planning the menu for the wedding." I froze, flushing scarlet. Kaine blinked, startled. "How did you even—" I began. "Oh, please," Marianne scoffed. "You think I don't keep track of my strays? Honestly. Took you both long enough." Rylan appeared behind her, sipping yet another coffee. "I'm billing you for emotional labor," he told Kaine, deadpan. For the first time, Kaine actually laughed. Low, rough, real. And when his hand found mine, this time without hesitation, I realized the line I'd been walking all this time wasn't a cage or a leash. It was a path, one I'd chosen. And I wasn't walking it alone.